Good evening and welcome to a special edition of the Tom Murphy Show. Tonight we have three candidates for public office on the stage here. We have myself, I'm running for county legislator in the 7th District. And we have Clark Noringer, who's running for mayor of the village of Mamaroneck. And we have Kerry Stein, who's running for trustee. Welcome, gentlemen, for coming on tonight. And in this hot evening, I'm glad you both could make it.
Thank you for having us.
Now, Kerry, you're more of a newcomer to the political and public scene in Mamaroneck. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your past involvement in the village?
Sure. I now lived here for 22 years. Married to Jean Marie. I have two children, one that just finished the Hummocks and one at the high school going into her senior year. I've been a lacrosse coach for 12 years. Finally stopping last year was my last year. I still am a soccer coach for Larchmont Mamaroneck Youth Soccer. I've been involved with the pumpkin patch
that's where I met you.
Been done exactly right, and that was more than 10 years ago.
When we could still lift pumpkins easily.
Yeah, we used to empty the 18-wheel trucks, exactly, and have tried to be as involved in some of the school stuff. I built the stage for 3 years at the Central School Play, which always called for volunteers.
Right.
I did a couple of the scare fairs, and generally anything that the kids were involved in, we were involved in also.
And I know you were also involved in your alma mater, your college, where you...
I'm on the Board of Trustees of Franklin Pierce University and have been now for 8 years.
So you have some experience already being on governing boards? Yes.
Yes, and it's been a very good experience.
Great. Clark, you're more familiar. You've been on the show before and you've been a fixture in the village and as a volunteer for decades helping out. Could you just give the few folks who don't know you a little overview of your history in the village of Mamaroneck?
Well, I've been in the village now 38 years, and I've had the distinct honor and privilege, actually, of having served on every single land use board in the village of Mamaroneck, going back to, I guess I started in 1991 and have sat on a board or commission continuously ever since. And that includes serving 10 years on the Zoning Board of Appeals, 5 years as chair, planning boards. I was chair of Board of Architectural Review and numerous other appointed positions for commissions and so forth. So I have a fairly good sense of things related to land use issues in this village going back quite a while.
Very good. And you're known to the village staff because you're always interacting with them through your work and also through your volunteer work.
Well, fortunately, again, my practice as an architect is based here in the village of Mamaroneck, so I am around. I do use the local offices, building department, village hall, and so forth, and so there is quite a bit of interaction, and I've come to appreciate the village, come to know it, and it's a pleasure to be able to both live and work here.
Now, guys, there's a lot of stuff percolating in the village of Mamaroneck now. You can read the papers. There's always some strum and drang and some issues, whether about open government, which we seem to have less of, or about land use. Now, Kerry, what do you feel are some of the important issues that you're going to have to address in this campaign?
I think for me, part of the impetus for doing this is that we moved here specifically for the village that it was and is. This is a unique coastal environment like none I've seen. And it's important to me that it stays that way. And I sometimes get the sense that there's a push to make it more of a city. And I specifically didn't move to a New Rochelle or a White Plains to live in a village. So that, I think, is on a lot of people's minds.
I think so too. And maintaining the small town community feel and the idea of living in a village and not living in a larger, I understand that, and I feel the same way. Clark, tell me more about what's going on with land use in the village of Mamaroneck now.
Well, I think the thing that is percolating up more and more and of interest to more and more people from what I hear is the notion of what is ultimately happening to the village of Mamaroneck if certain visions are executed. For example, this village is unique. There's not another harbor like it on Long Island Sound. It's been recognized as such. We're proud of it. Every resident who lives here is proud of it. Yet there are attempts, it seems, to try and change methods and procedures and processes of how we govern, how we choose to make decisions as to what happens in our harbor. This is a coastal village. It is unique in the sense that it is a working harbor. People live around the harbor. There are clubs around the harbor. There's everything around the harbor. It is not like Greenwich, Connecticut. We do not want to be like Greenwich, Connecticut, which is surrounded on its harbor by concrete office buildings and condominium buildings. That's not what Mamaroneck is. And I would say that the majority of people would like to keep the character that exists in Mamaroneck as it is. And it's hard to understand why there might be people, folks out there, looking to fix something when something isn't really broken.
Well, just to give folks at home a little primer, what they're talking about is changing the LWRP, which is the Local Waterfront Revitalization Plan. And that law and that document is what has maintained Mamaroneck as the coastal village you described it, and has kept us from becoming, like some of the other communities that you described, where there isn't access to the water and there isn't a view of the water. Now, for myself, a person that doesn't live on the water and doesn't belong to a club, I've always felt that I benefit from living by the water anyway, because it increases my property values that I'm a community that is by the water, and I'm able to access the water in terms of Harbor Island. And there's something rejuvenative and peaceful about being able to live by the water, to be able to walk down Fenimore Road and to see that beautiful vista that you have when you come down Fenimore Road and you see the West Basin. And that, to me, although I may never sit on a boat in the harbor, means a lot. And I think that's what you guys are fighting to preserve here.
Absolutely. When you drive up and down Route 1 and you look at the natural beauties there, and I will tell you that after 22 years of living here, I still look at it every day and think it's pretty incredible that this is where we live. And I don't know anyone that tires of seeing boats in the basin, and I don't ever want to see that changed.
Neither do I, and I think that's a good point. So guys, what I know there's been a lot of talk about, and there's always talk and concern about the openness of government, of every government. You see it on the state level, you see it on the county level, and you definitely see it here in the village of Mamaroneck. Clark, what would you do to enhance the citizens' participation and the citizens' ability to find out what's going on in the village of Mamaroneck?
I think the simplest thing to do is let folks have the ability to address their government. Let folks get up and speak. And hopefully there would be people sitting up on the dais that would be willing to engage those folks. There's an amazing amount of intelligence and hardworking people in this village that want to come forward and give good suggestions and good ideas. It gets awfully frustrating to witness people getting up to speak and being cut off. First of all, maybe a 2-minute warning goes off or a 3-minute buzzer goes off, and I think that's almost unconscionable. If folks have something to say, they ought to be heard. But more importantly than that, for them to be dismissed time after time after time by a simple thank you without even any desire to engage them in a discussion on some of the ideas they have, why would you do that? What if someone comes up and has a real suggestion on how to improve certain conditions or things in the village? Why not engage in a dialogue? That would be open government. That would be a willingness to listen to people. That would be a willingness to seek out, you have an idea, we want to hear it. You have something you want to discuss, we would like to have that discussion. And I just think that's lacking, and I don't think there's a real rationale for it. And a lot of people in this village are not very thrilled about having a buzzer go off, sometimes arbitrarily, to limit their discussion.
I was going to say, I think interestingly, the founding principle of for the people, by the people is as simple as it gets. It's elected officials are there for the constituency, not for their own desires and whims. You bring ideas to the table, but it does have to remain open to everybody.
You know, and I found when I was lucky enough to serve on the board, is that you really do get, you know, if you stop and you listen and you flesh out some of the ideas that people bring up, you really do get better government. And you really do get, you know, sometimes not just open government, but more open your own view. Because you realize, you know, that there are other views out there, and a lot of them have merit. And I have sat there and had my mind changed. And you know, I think anybody that sits there with an open mind and has an intelligent person come up and make a point, even if they don't agree 100%, it changes something in you. You realize that there's another perspective out there, and that's important because, you know, a lot of times, like you said before, it's easy to get caught up in your own, you know, your own worldview. And you know, whether in life or in government, it's good to know that there's another worldview. And you know, we don't have in here. We don't have a monopoly on, you know, what's right. Although I tell my children I do, but they don't necessarily believe that. Now I know you guys are up for a big long campaign, and the Village of Mamaroneck is one of the few communities in Westchester County that's a village that has their election in November. And I think that's a very good thing because it gets a lot of people out to vote. Where if you look at some of the other communities that have their election in March, you don't get the same turnout. What are you going to do to encourage people to come out to vote? Because it's an odd-numbered year, and that makes it more difficult to get everybody out.
From my point of view, and the only reason that I undertook or agreed to run in this race is I believe there's a time now, because of so much going on in the village, that the people deserve to have a choice and an alternative. And I'm putting myself forward, along with Kerry, to just offer that sort of choice. There is, over the last several years, there has been a concerted effort to create changes in the village pursuant to a certain vision. There may be other alternatives, there may be other visions, and we want to offer that sort of choice. And I would hope between now and election time, Kerry and I get around to all sections of the village and speak to as many people as possible, engage in a conversation. Let's have a discussion about what the issues are. I actually felt pushed into running because there is a lot of discontent out there. People are concerned. They're discontented by some of the changes that have been effected, and they're even more concerned by some of the things that are proposed or have been put out on the table. Kerry and I need to speak with folks and understand what their concerns are, and as I said, we want to offer a choice.
You know, there's always a perennial concern and fear, and a well-founded fear in this village of flooding. You know, and hopefully, if I get to, you know, to be the county legislator, I can help the village access more funds and more information to mitigate flooding. But you know, I know that both of you, you know, are longtime residents. What do you feel needs to be done, you know, in a concrete fashion? You know, we've heard, you know, stuff about shovel-ready projects and kind of some stuff that's doable and some stuff that's really a fantasy. But you know, what's your feeling about, you know, flooding and issues revolving around flooding?
Well, I think we live in a coastal village. There is an inevitability that there are areas that are going to flood. I think that flood mitigation is a fantastic place to start, but we also have to be realistic about where we build things. You can't expect to build something on a beach and have it last through a hurricane. So I think careful attention to new building, to water runoff, to what we put around our rivers, keeping the rivers clean, keeping them open. I think we can do a lot of things that will help. I don't think you can ever stop it fully on the coast, and so I think the best precaution is to not build in the flood zones, certainly along the harbor and along Long Island Sound.
Excellent.